Another button. Here we go.
Okay.
Uh, did it just start live from where we were, or does it? There's backlog. Okay, this is. Dang it! My intro's gone. Okay, well,
Do it again.
um, gosh, that's very frustrating. Okay, guys, take two. This may seem a little bit jumbled. We're late, obviously. Um, there's a new like YouTube studio thing that I there's two buttons to go live. It's a whole deal. So that's on me. Bill and I just had a 15-minute conversation before we started this. Okay, we are live for episode 111. In this episode, we're going to talk about how much we hate Star Trek. In fact, you know what? We're switching to Star Wars. This is now a Star Wars podcast. No, I'm just pulling you guys' leg. Bill and I are not going to grow mustaches and goatees. We are just talking about Mirror Mirror this morning. Yeah. How you doing this morning, Bill?
Yeah. Doing well. Yeah. You're not switching. I have been watching lots and lots of Star Wars.
Yes.
New movie just came out. I saw it. Dan has not yet. So we could do a Star Wars show. Maybe, possibly.
Maybe.
But we're not switching to the dark side.
Yeah.
Yet, at least. So, yeah, I'm really excited to talk about the Mirror Universe. This is something that we've covered a good bit on Trek Live, more like as side conversations or like portions of other bigger, more specific things.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Ian, glad you could join us. But yeah, I think if in my memory, is that like as we were going through season 1 of Discovery, you kind of made it clear that you were not super excited about Discovery doing a whole lot with the Mirror Universe. You weren't a huge fan of that part of the universe. It wasn't your favorite thing. And that sort of informed that kind of framed our conversation of that stretch of episodes a little bit in the early part of it, at least.
Yeah.
Because you were sort of resistant to it. I had mixed feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you've seen that
mm-hmm.
and have had lots of time to sort of dissect that and digest that, and then you just got to Mirror in your TOS rewatch, I believe, since we've done Discovery season 1, since that was new.
Yep.
I think since then you've done the end of Enterprise where they do some Mirror Universe stuff. You haven't done Deep Space Nine yet. You haven't rewatched Deep Space Nine yet, so that's not fresh for you. But you've gotten a lot of maybe fresh perspectives on the Mirror Universe that may or may not have shifted your.
Yeah.
I don't really know, to be honest with you, how much your opinion has changed or stayed the same. But I have very mixed feelings. I'm definitely in the gray area myself, and I'm hoping that talking about it will be interesting and maybe even help me figure out which side of the coin I kind of fall on for the idea more broadly. But specifically, we do want to talk about. I think the first thing we're going to do is really talk about Mirror Mirror.
Yes,
I think
that's
it's an episode
and then on to the greater.
We'll cover
Universe.
after that.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll talk about what we think of the Mirror Universe more broadly. But I'm really interested to talk about Mirror Mirror more specifically. It's an obvious classic episode. It always shows up on top 10 lists for TOS and best of lists for the whole franchise. So curious to see what you thought of it as a fresh rewatch. So
before we jump into the main topic of the day, how's your rewatch going?
It's paused. Since
Same
the last
here.
time we did this, I haven't really done much. Like I said, I was sort of in the midst of Ian says no Star Wars spoilers, please. Yeah, that's a good idea. Dan hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. So
Ian hasn't seen it. I have. I'm not going to talk about it in detail at all. But the reason I haven't done much with the Trek rewatches over the last week and a half, I've been rewatching Star Wars for the first time in a really long time. Prequels, original trilogy, new stuff, episodes 1 through 8, really. So that took up a lot of my time. It's also hot and heavy movie season. There's a lot of new stuff
that
I'm trying to stay on top of too. So unfortunately, I'm still stuck on The Bonding is my next episode. So early season 3.
Okay.
But as soon as we get through like the holidays and now that Star Wars is behind me, I think I'll get moving on that. So yeah, you said you haven't
I haven't watched
Seen
anything.
anything new this
Cat's
week?
Paw is my next episode, so that's the seventh episode of season 2. So I'm curious to jump into that maybe this coming week. But yeah, I see we
Right.
jump into the main topic here. Mirror, Mirror. Like Bill said, we're going to start with the kind of the specific episode spotlight, and then go on to the greater Mirror universe and how it kind
Okay.
of plays with everything. Where this kind of topic stemmed from was typical Trek Live, tangents that we get on, specifically season 1 of Discovery, back when I think we were still on Facebook and talking about, week to week each Discovery episode. And yeah, Bill's right. Was not excited to kind of go the Mirror Universe direction. I just hadn't been a fan. So that's kind of what my opinion was, before that. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. No, that's definitely what I remember.
That being said, it kind of timed. It's perfect because like Bill said, I did do Enterprise and their Mirror Universe stuff, and then I just hit Mirror Mirror on my rewatch pretty recently, so it's pretty fresh. I feel like I have some stuff to say. So, talking about Mirror Mirror, it's not a bad episode, right? I like this big sci-fi concept that they take on in early season 2 of TOS. So I like the concept. And I like exploring the darker side of humanity and, that type of stuff too. But watching it again, I get the feeling that I wasn't supposed to like the Mirror Universe. You're not supposed to like the Mirror Universe. So that's where it kind of changed before I came in with this prejudice of the Mirror Universe being so, swashbuckle and just over the top, stuff like that. So I think you're just not supposed to like the Mirror Universe. It's more savage and,
Sure.
a different, so polar opposite. It's literally the opposite. So I think they did a good job doing that, really, selling that, yeah, these are the complete opposites of what we know, what we've seen,
What we're comfortable in. Yeah.
what we're comfortable in. So I think if I try to put myself in the headspace of, okay, I'm watching this for the first time as a fan, there's no other backlog of, all this Deep Space Nine stuff, all this Enterprise stuff, all this Discovery stuff from a fan, and I'm in the second season. That's just, to me, that is mind-blowing how big the concept is and how different these characters seem. So, yeah, that's my first impressions of it. Sorry it's a little
Do you
long.
remember? Do you remember, like, before, going back years now at this point, when you first saw Mirror Mirror, were you did you dislike it initially, like your first go around?
I didn't dislike it
Mhm.
because I hadn't seen Deep Space Nine yet, and if that's
Sure.
that alludes to kind of what I'm feeling about Deep Space Nine stuff. So it went, TOS, and then I watched Deep Space Nine for the first time. So
I think we're probably on the same page.
yeah,
About something. So yeah.
yeah,
No, I hear what you're saying. I think if the episode makes you as eager to get out of there as the characters are, if you feel like this is uncomfortable, this is not where I'm supposed to be, which is clearly, there's a real sense of urgency to that dilemma. Like there's a real threatening problem to solve for Kirk and company in that episode. And if you feel any degree of the discomfort that they're feeling, I'd say it's doing its job. It's successful on that level, at least. But you're right. It is over the top intentionally, I believe. It is swashbuckling and cutthroat. The Enterprise feels more like a pirate ship.
Yeah.
It feels more like that than like a military disciplined, kind of situation. I mean, there's a degree of that on the Mirror Universe Enterprise. I mean, it's certainly an organization where there are rules and regulations and guidelines that people are following and traditions that people are kind of abiding by. But it's a little bit more cutthroat and it's a little bit more savage, obviously, a lot more, really. But yeah, I think the strength of Mirror is in its sort of. I think they do a really good job of making it sort of inexplicable and crazy. Like I love the fact that it's a one-off and that the crew doesn't totally understand like what's happening, and they
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. They kind of get an idea of where they are and how it's possible
Yeah.
and all that. But they're kind of guessing. Like there's not a really clearly defined. Um, okay, here's where we are. This is how we got here. This is how we have to get out. Like
Yeah.
I love the urgency of that, and it's one of those like genuinely how are they going to get out of this? Uh,
And it's a gamble to
fact,
get back too.
it's a gamble. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a risk.
Yeah, it's a risk
it's not
to
a
get back.
guarantee.
Yeah.
And I think they do a really good job selling that too. That it's not a guarantee, and that it's a really tough needle to thread to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
But as a standalone episode, as just a TOS episode, and not thinking of it as an introduction to a sort of subplot that's going to lead its way through multiple shows over 50 some years. I think it's one of their best. I think on a production design level, I think the subtle changes to the bridge and captain's quarters, the captain's chair has like a higher back, like little obviously not super expensive things that they had to do, painting the symbol on the doors and just like little simple things. I think really give the episode some juice from that side of things, the production design and giving it production value.
Yeah, it's really smart of them because right, you don't really have to build any big sets. You already have the bases, right? You just have to change a few little things to make it similar enough to feel like it's definitely an extension of what we've seen before, but change it just like Ian says, with the mirror image of the Earth for the Terran Empire. So
really cool.
Yeah,
it's really it's a bottle show with a lot of ingenuity going into sprucing up the existing sets. Like they're not building new things. They're not spending a whole lot of money on planet side stuff or building a new ship set or anything like that. It's all existing standing stuff. But it's there's a lot of ingenuity going into giving it a different vibe and making it clear you're not in your home. In your home.
Yeah.
You're not home. You're in a completely different environment where the rules are different and people are different. And I think it does a really cool job of giving. And as you're watching it, I'm curious to see if you're sort of feeling this. We've talked about doing an episode on like series structure and how they treat the characters as far as like who's at the top of the food chain and who's not. A lot of the other shows are more ensemble based than like TOS might be.
Yeah.
TOS is clearly a show that Kirk, Spock, and McCoy drive most of the time. But I love the fact that in Mirror, a lot of those supporting characters get cool things to do. A lot of the supporting actors really, because a lot of them aren't really playing. You're not seeing Prime Sulu, like our Sulu, really at all here. But George Takei gets to do some cool things, playing, badass Mirror Universe Sulu, who's like the chief security guy.
Yeah.
I think Nichelle Nichols was really good as Uhura in her scene going on the bridge and having to flirt her way, and play the game, and much to her discomfort to get the job done. I think she's really, really good, and that's some of her best stuff in the series. I love the way it uses those actors. James Doohan has some cool things to do as Scotty in it. So yeah, I think it does a really good job of utilizing the cast and giving some of the characters that we don't get to see as often, other than sitting at their console doing their job, some interesting new things to do, even if it's not our own version of the character. If that makes sense. So I like that it gives those actors room to stretch and do some cool things. Whenever TOS does that, it feels like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah,
because it doesn't.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree with that. I don't know if I have anything more to say about the episode. I think this is probably my favorite, if you could call it Mirror Universe episode.
I think it's the best of the Mirror Universe episodes.
Yeah.
I think the ending of it is what gives it real. It's real juice too. I think
Mm-hmm.
you know the certainly the mystery of where are we, how do we get out of here, good, and like I said, the horror going onto the bridge and having to do it, like there are scenes like that that work all the way up through it. But I think from the point they Spock sort of figures it out in sickbay and his mind meld with McCoy onward, and the scene in the transporter room, I think that stuff is next level great Star Trek.
Yeah.
Kirk taking the time to try to give a Kirk speech to appeal to the logic of the situation with Spock, that clearly this is not sustainable. You can't run an empire like this. This is not this is not going to work in the long run.
It's not logical.
And Spock knows that it's not logical. Yeah. Yeah. And Spock knows that. I love that too. That like Spock doesn't really argue with him on that level. It's just he's a creature of his environment, and he's doing his job.
You are what you're around. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I love Kirk's appeal to try to inspire change in Spock, and for Spock to try to push that through.
Yeah.
And later on, that does come in. Like they do. One of the cool things about what Deep Space Nine does that we're going to get into is that it does run with that idea. But that final scene in the transporter room is to me the sort of classic punch that elevates it to that upper tier of TOS episodes for me.
Yeah. Ian is making a great point. If the Terrans hate non-humans, how does Spock end up in charge? Did they mention that in the Mirror episode?
I don't think they specifically mention it. I think my takeaway is always that he's half human. Still, I assume.
Yeah,
he would be. And I think the Empire is not beyond. Spock has abilities and Spock has talents and traits that I think the Empire would find useful if he were to demonstrate a degree of loyalty. If he was willing to play the game, I think the Empire would use Spock. It uses all its. I mean, the Empire is not any kinder to its human pawns either. I mean, they get picked off bit by bit. They get killed for very easily, and it's very cutthroat business. So I don't get the sense that the Empire really cares about its people, like its officers. I think it's going to use everybody and chew them up and spit them out as needed. But I think Spock's traits would be useful to the Empire if he were to prove his usefulness, I guess. Yeah. That's always been my assumption. But I think that's one of the more interesting things about Mirror. I think the fact that it just kind of, I like being thrown into these kinds of things and having the backstory not necessarily like filled in completely. Like I like to be able to think about these things and do some work myself. So I like the mystery of it, the whole thing. Like, how does this work? And and I think what we're going to talk about here in a minute is I think the more that you go back to it, and the more you try to fill it in, and the more that you try to make it make sense, the flimsier it ends up actually becoming, and the harder it is for it to work. For me, at least, I think the strength of Mirror is that it is, at the time at least, it was a one-off that wasn't concerned with bogging us down with a ton of backstory and rules and this is how everything works kind of structure. So
agreed. Yeah, Ian, I thought that they kind of explored that kind of in the later stuff into
iterations. Yeah, Enterprise too, especially. I think T'Pol being on the ship. And other aliens sort of being under the thumb of the Empire, like the Empire's using them. They have skills and traits and abilities and strengths that the Empire finds useful, and they have roles, but they're kept under their thumb. You know what I mean? Like they're not given full authority. Spock certainly has grown beyond, I think, on the ship on the Enterprise, where like T'Pol was in Enterprise on the mirror universe of the NX-01. But yeah, I think it creates some interesting opportunities for thinking about like how did that happen and what led Spock to have that sort of power and that kind of trust.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I guess we could kind of move on to the kind of the greater mirror universe stuff. Yeah. And I think we should do kind of maybe a follow-up episode to this because more than likely my next series on the rewatch is going to be Deep Space Nine, so it would be nice to see, you know, because I think
you have some...
that is the Deep Space Nine and Enterprise. That's where I have issues with the mirror universe. So I think it would be cool to kind of do a follow-up episode to this one. But
yeah, we will definitely do that.
Yeah.
Is what I kind of just said, does that kind of sum it up for you? Do you find that the more they go back to it, the more they try, like, is it that simple, or is it something more specific to the way Deep Space Nine used it? Like, where does your
yeah, again, I think that's where it stems from, is that maybe people have used this term before, but they go back to the well too much, and it changes a little bit, which I think kind of affects Mirror. I feel like if they didn't go back to it as much, or I don't know, we could play What If all day, but
sure, yeah, it's hard to.
Yeah, I just think that they just went too far with it. There's some stuff that Star Trek does really well, like really subtly. But again, this is one of those things where I feel like they kept going back to it a little bit too much, into something that I wasn't really on board with to begin with. So I know that it's quoted a lot, and I think my perspective on it has changed with the Kelvin timeline, because I think that that it's another big sci-fi concept going to a different universe, right, or timeline, so to speak.
Yeah, the timeline is definitely like an oddball, like kind of extension of this idea.
So I think it can be done really well and really subtly, but I think, again, if you look at that, the sample size is a lot smaller, right? There's only
for sure
3 episodes. I say episodes. There's 6 hours of it, but with the Mirror universe, it's a little bit longer. But fast forward to Discovery, me going into it again, I was not psyched about it. I wasn't really looking forward to going there, but I think they did it as well as they could have, right? I feel like it was very subtle going into it. They kind of captured the uncomfortableness that was Mirror. So I feel like Burnham, when she was there, she was very uncomfortable with it, right? But to me, in Discovery, it felt like she was getting comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? I feel like there is some sort of...
That's what she's fighting against, yeah.
There is some... You can feel comfortable because, again, could be a part of you. Could be an extension of what we could become. So I think that was kind of fun to explore. I really liked that. There's some I don't know, throwbacks to the Agony booth and a bunch of other small stuff. The phasers and the phaser in the back of the back of the pants or whatever. That's to me screams Mirror. And the Mirror universe still is creating ripples into the Prime timeline, right? It's Georgiou, she's in our universe now, and it's still, that still ties from the Mirror universe. So
definitely.
I'm not saying that I want to have a Mirror universe show or I want to find Prime Lorca in the Mirror Universe or something like that. No, that's not it. I think it was done really subtly.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What are
Spent
your
just enough time there.
What are your overall thoughts of like the
Um,
universe proper or Mirror Universe proper? I guess besides Mirror Universe.
I think the first time Deep Space Nine went there in the second season crossover, I think that's a great episode. I think that really did a cool job of sort of directly. It's not a direct sequel by any means, but they explain that the state of the Mirror Universe is what it is because Spock listened to Kirk and tried to change the course of the Empire, which sort of flipped the whole scenario. Like now the humans are sort of the trash of the universe, so to speak, and they've become the rebels who are trying to fight out from under like this other empire that's being I like that. I like the boldness of saying that Spock did listen to Kirk, and that had a ripple effect into the Mirror Universe hundreds of years later. 100 years later, I guess. I like crossover. I think crossover, unlike some Space Nine, captures that, like you were just saying, with what Discovery did and what I think Mirror does so well, with giving it a sense of urgency, scary. We got to get out of here. We're not safe here. Really selling that sense of urgency. I think crossover seriousness and the threatening nature of the universe for our characters is what gives that episode its strength. Later on, I think it becomes a little too easy to go back to it. I think each time they go back in Deep Space Nine in particular, it becomes less threatening, less scary, and a little bit more kind of run of the mill and just kind of cutesy. This is the flip versions of I think it becomes I think the novelty of it has kind of worn off, and it becomes flimsier, I think, as you go on. Like the concept of the opposite, like such opposite versions of each of us sort of sustaining itself through history, and the timelines sort of staying parallel to some extent while everything is different. It becomes a harder thing for me to chew on and believe. The longer we're spending time there. So that's where a lot of my frustration comes into play. I preferred it when it was less treaded on territory, like when it was more of a one-off with Mirror and maybe crossover. You just leave it at that. I think the Mirror Universe would be better served as a cool little aside. I think having more of it. Yeah, Rom you may not remember this, Dan, but the last episode of
Trek
Mirror
Ranks.
Universe, Trek Ranks, you referenced it.
Yeah. Well, you guys talked about it, Trek Ranks too, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Rom trying to make sense of it is exactly like that's
the audience.
That's the audience. And that's the best thing in that episode for sure. That's the last time we're there in Deep Space Nine. That's the last time chronologically that we're there. That's the last thing we see in the Mirror Universe from a timeline standpoint. And that episode's very silly and very ridiculous. Quark and Rom in the Mirror Universe trying to help steal cloaking technology for the rebellion and blah blah blah. It's really goofy stuff, but it's almost made worth it just by that scene with Rom. It's actually a couple scenes. It's like threaded throughout the episode. Rom's kind of like mind's exploding, trying to make sense of it. That is exactly how I feel about it. So I do love that.
What about your beloved Enterprise?
Enterprise, I feel like because it goes back to the beginning.
Yeah.
I think the ingenuity of the premise of In a Mirror Darkly is what kind of captures me. The idea of having it be like a prequel to Mirror, but a sequel to the Tholian Web with the Defiant.
Yeah.
And that the coolness of that idea and the nostalgia of getting to build those sets and put those characters in those uniforms and all. I can't lie and say that stuff just doesn't work on me on like the most superficial, shallow level. Like
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So that I think that really helps that episode, and it allows me to forgive. Are we really going back here again? Those kinds of feelings that I have. So I love In a Mirror Darkly. I'm much more forgiving of that than I am of the last handful of Deep Space Nine efforts.
Yeah.
And then for Discovery, I think what you kind of alluded to, I think the best thing about Discovery's take on the Mirror Universe is really focused on that front. The Wolf Inside is the episode specifically where Burnham's on the Shenzhou. She's pretending to be the captain, Mirror Burnham, and her struggle is trying to resist the urge to become comfortable in this environment.
Yeah.
That is an interesting take on this idea. Like we've had so many times up until that point, characters either willfully or accidentally or however getting sucked into that universe and getting thrown into a situation and having to play out this scenario or that or get out or whatever the episode calls for. I think I love the way that Discovery found sort of a new way to explore what's it mean to be here, and having the character be sort of forced to spend some time there and have to like settle down, but resist the urge to feel any sense of this is normal.
Yeah.
And get used to it, like having to constantly remind yourself that this isn't me. This isn't what this is completely unacceptable on every level.
Yeah.
Still having to go through the motions and do it. Having to go to the transporter room and watch crewmen get beamed into space for who knows what. And just having to go through the motions and tolerate it while maintaining, holding on to your humanity. That stuff makes the Discovery exploration of the Mirror Universe work for me best, I think. Yeah, so I think Enterprise and Discovery both found fresh things to explore with that territory. I think they found new ways to make it cool and interesting by playing with the timeline and doing prequel-y stuff and not playing in this continuing story arc that Deep Space Nine kind of does with, humanity rebelling against the Klingons and the Cardassians, and that I think grates on me over time, and I find it to be a little too paint by numbers, a little too self-referential and silly to like keep the premise comfortably like standing on its own. Like I feel like it makes it easy to pick apart the logic of it. It doesn't keep me engaged enough to where I'll ignore or can kind of look past the more structural frustrating things about what the Mirror Universe even is.
Yeah, I mean, both are kind of prequel shows, so I guess it's it makes it easier. But
right.
Could you would you have wanted? I probably have asked you this before, but would you have wanted to see a TNG Mirror Universe or a Voyager Mirror Universe?
Not really, no. I think Voyager found really cool ways in episodes like Living Witness and in Author, which is a controversial episode, to scratch that itch.
TNG have an episode kind of like that where Guinan was the only one who knew.
Yesterday's Enterprise.
Sorry.
Yeah, they're in a more militarized, hardcore situation. They're not bad. Like they're just in a more dire situation. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of giving you an alternate version of these characters. But Voyager, I think, finds cool ways to, like I said, scratch that itch and make you like give you sort of those same warm and fuzzies. Like what's a mirror version of Tuvok? Like? Yeah. Like you can get that without doing the actual Mirror Universe thing. And I like the way that Voyager found fresh ways to play in that kind of territory without just doing the Mirror Universe thing. I think by that point, especially while Deep Space Nine was doing it with mixed results. I think the easier way to do that probably would have been to do the first thing. If you want to do that to your characters and give your characters that sort of flip side treatment, the more brave way to do it is what Voyager did, and I give them credit for that. I think they made the right decision to avoid it. So yeah, I'm happy they didn't do it. I think those shows in particular, because of what Deep Space Nine did, and well, TNG's before Deep Space Nine, obviously. So, who knows what they would have done? I have a harder time envisioning. Maybe that would have been the most interesting one, because those characters are so good and bright. Like there's so little gray to those characters. They're all like the pure Gene Roddenberry. Like this is the best of humanity.
Yep.
Like those mirror versions of those characters probably would have been
very
interesting, very different.
Yeah.
Where Deep Space Nine and Voyager, I think, play in slightly more gray areas than TNG does. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm glad they didn't do it. I think mirror universe stuff in Star Trek, and I think it's a if you're going to do it, you better do it well. You better have a real reason to do it. I think Enterprise being at the very end of that run of Star Trek. The other thing I'll say about Enterprise, that was like 4 episodes to go kind of thing. Like there's like no time left. And for what all they knew, it was the end of everything. Like Star Trek was never gonna be on TV again. So they were kind of, going balls to the wall and just throwing every idea that they had, cool, like the coolest ideas they were trying to do. They were going for broke, and from that perspective, I can get down with it. I'm fine with them just going for broke. I like the ambition of building the Enterprise sets, the Defiant, doing the sequel to Mirror Universe, sequel to Tholian Web, prequel to going that bold at the very end of the run is a cool way to go. And then Discovery found, I think, by having a character from there and the whole Lorca arc, like Discovery found a reason to do it. I felt like they weren't just going there to go there and just kind of cross the checkout box and do it just to do it. So if you're going to do it, you got to have a really good reason to do it. And I prefer you not to be honest, at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I didn't think about that. The last run of episodes has some mirror universe stuff for Enterprise, which was quote unquote the last show on TV, and now they bring it back with some mirror universe ties. So
Ian saying that the credits are the best part of the Enterprise ones, like that was cool. Like that just goes to show, like like I said, the balls to the wall. We're just throwing it all out there. We're not leaving anything on the table. Every crazy idea we have, like on that level, and from that perspective, I'm okay with them doing it. And I think they executed it well. I think they did a good job with it. So yeah, that kind of stuff is the best part of the Enterprise version of it. I think the audacity of it. And Ian also says that they've done mirror universe versions of TNG and Voyager in comics now. I haven't seen those. I think I remember something about TNG mirror universe in comics. But I'd be curious to hear from anybody who's read them.
Yeah.
How are they? Are they worthwhile? Should we be looking for those?
All right, to conclude my thoughts on the Mirror Universe, I still am not a fan. I think there are some elements to it that I like. I do like Mirror, but I guess and Mirror and Discovery, I don't mind, but I'm just not. I still can't get on board with Mirror Universe proper, I guess I should say. So yeah,
I'm in the gray area. I get, it's hard for me to say that I don't like it because I like a lot of the episodes that take place in it between Mirror, the Discovery stuff, Enterprise. At least 1 or 2 of the Deep Space Nine episodes, I'd consider myself a thumbs up on. But I do think it's overused. I find myself wishing that it was used more sparingly, and tried to. I wish they tried less to make it a fleshed out place. Like I wish it was more.
That's
I
a
wish it was
great way to put it. Yeah.
And yeah, like the less you know, the scarier it is.
Yep.
The mysterious it is. The
kind of like the Borg.
yeah, exactly. The more you dive in and you fill in the backstory, which is a tempting thing to do, especially when there's a perception out there, rightfully so, that it's cool, because it is. The Borg, Mirror Universe, things like that. People want to know more. People want to see more of it. But the more you fill in the gaps and make it make sense, and you fill in backstory, the less intimidating it becomes, the less alien it becomes, the less mysterious it is. And I think the Mirror Universe lends itself to having that trait. I think it's best served by having those kinds of adjectives be applicable to it. Like, I think the more mysterious it is, the less we know about it, the scarier it will be, and the more effective it is when it's used. So I do wish they went back to the well a few less times, even though most recently the Enterprise stuff, the Discovery stuff, at the end of the day, I agree with their takes on the Mirror Universe. So I'm a walking contradiction on it. I have very mixed feelings.
Yeah.
The broader I get, the orbit level, looking down on the whole thing, the more I can comfortably say, I wish they left it alone, leave it more of a one-off kind of thing. But if I get down into the episodes and I think about In the Mirror Darkly and Despite Yourself and The Wolf Inside and Crossover, the harder it is for me to maintain that, because I like those episodes.
Yeah, the way I think about it is, hey, you take away those episodes, or a few of those episodes, we get a Deep Space Nine season 8, a few episodes there, and then on the Borg side, you take away some of those Borg episodes. Oh, maybe we get home and there's some episodes of, a Voyager picking up the pieces. So that's how that is how I see it. Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the more frustrating, in my mind, elements of the Star Trek universe, because it's very present, and it's one of those things that people know. One of the things that is kind of, I think the reason that it's easy to go back to is it's one of the few things from Star Trek that has kind of specifically permeated its way into pop culture. People know, enough people out there know that if you have a goatee, you're the bad version of you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That
Mirror Spock image is so iconic, and it's so people who don't really know Star Trek might know that. That's one of those things that really landed for people. So that makes it an easy thing to sort of go back to. It's stuff like that. It's stuff like the Borg. It's stuff like Khan. Things like that have really become part of the pop culture personality of Star Trek, that you don't have to know Star Trek in and out to appreciate it. It becomes a tempting thing to kind of go back to. For things like Deep Space Nine and Enterprise and Discovery and future stuff. Yeah,
I will say this. I love the costume design. The cutoffs. Shatner gets to show off his guns. The sash is cool. I like that. The the war medals, the pins on the actual uniform, and the knives. They all have knives somehow, or phasers, and I love that.
That's the kind of stuff that I think really does kind of set Mirror apart. It is a bottle show, but at the same time, you get the sense that the production design team, the prop department worked overtime to make that episode happen. The costumes are there's a lot of new stuff in it, and for a single episode, to every character has a different version of a uniform. There are different props, the little agonizers, the like I said, the knives, the daggers, they really did. They redressed every set, at least some more subtly than others. But I can't, especially within the context of TOS, and what things they were able to do and not able to do. I think Mirror is clearly one of the more impressively mounted episodes.
Mm-hmm.
and but it's not like in your face. Like Doomsday Machine is an episode that's like ambitious from a visual effects standpoint and action kind of level.
Yeah.
That's a much more like in your face, wow kind of effort. But Mirror
Yep.
Mirror is clearly a big production as well, but it's on a different kind of level, I guess. Like I said, it's that episode. I think of the props, the production design, the costumes, even the cinematography. I think the way the sets are shot and lit is slightly different. It's a little darker. It's a little. They do just enough with the camera to make it to illustrate to you, the audience, that you're in a different place. It's not the same comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not that they're not shooting it the exact same way that they shoot the typical sickbay scene or the typical bridge scene.
Yeah.
So really, really great stuff on that level.
Yeah. One last quick thing, real quick. Speaking of camera stuff, to fast forwarding to Discovery, the toothbrush mirror. At that, when I was watching it, I didn't know what I was seeing, but now, like when I think about it, and when I'm gonna go back and rewatch it again, I'm just gonna think of the elegance, the subtleness of that was so wonderful, and also, Lorca with the phaser in the back, but that was a little bit less. But this one was like, oh yeah, here we go, So,
definitely one of the more fun things about Discovery season 1 is rewatching it, looking for the hints about Lorca, the little foreshadowing hints about the Mirror Universe stuff. There's a lot of it. There really is a good bit of it.
Yeah.
It really does lend itself well to the rewatch. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Any Star Trek?
Yeah.
Content do you like to mention? I like to mention Trek Ranks. The meta references with Bill. He did a great job. The missus and I actually listened to it together, so yeah.
That's an honor.
It was a really good. Everyone did really good research and definitely had some good picks. So definitely go check that out because I think that was. I mean, all of his episodes are good, but that was one of the good ones.
Did it hold the missus' attention? Was she?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did.
Nice.
Yep.
I'm honored. That I appreciate that. That was, like I said last week, and I think maybe even 2 weeks ago. That was one of the harder ones to do. Research was a little less naturally just kind of regurgitated stuff than what I usually am able to do. So
yeah,
but it came out okay.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So for me, I'll say that there was a new Making It So, which I've talked about a couple of times. It's an interview podcast with people who worked on the behind the scenes side of Trek. They interviewed David Livingston, who directed, who I think might be the most prolific director in Star Trek's history. I think he probably has the record of episodes. Directed a handful of TNGs, but a ton of Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, like in the 20s or 30s for those shows, I think.
Yeah.
Like maybe a season's worth of episodes in Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So they interviewed him, covered his experiences on the show. He was originally like a line producer on TNG, and he transitioned off of that and into directing, and he talks about that that transition of like being a line producer and having to worry about the budget for each episode and trying to keep it on track and putting everything on the schedule and keeping it in line, and then going to be a director and having to like push the bounds of that and trying to get more money and try to stretch as much as you can.
Yeah.
Like having to be polar opposites was cool.
Yep.
But that show's got a really cool backlog. They've interviewed Phil Strong, who wrote for Enterprise and Voyager, Ronald B. Moore, who was a visual effects guy for all the Rick Berman shows. Doug Drexler's been on there. Dan Curry's been on there. Kim Friedman's another director, has been on. Really, really good stuff. Making It So, I would really recommend. And one of the other guests on that last Trek Ranks episode that I did was Ross from Snap Trek. I love his show where they compare two episodes of Star Trek that are not necessarily like the most natural. Like, of course, like everybody would compare the Best of Both Worlds and Scorpion, but they do things like the Battle and Hope and Fear, TNG and Voyager episode in their most recent episode. I love that show. That was a great episode, but that's another one that if you're not into it, if you're not listening to it all the time, there's a great backlog full of really cool stuff.
Man, there's a lot of Making It So podcasts.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They've been around for long. They started at the beginning of the year, and they've interviewed quite a few.
Well, no, just other Making It So, like it.
Oh, different shows with that title.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
Yep. Yeah, Ian's giving you some love for your episode.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I really appreciate that.
Some other Star Trek content that I'd like to mention is both Bill and I's Twitter. We're both trying to do the GIF a day for 10 days type of thing. So definitely go over to our Twitter.
Characters we love.
Yeah. So, so this is probably going to be the last live show this year. I guess we can start wrapping it up. Mm-hmm. I'd love to do maybe a yearly recap, but that would probably be a pre-recorded thing. So,
yeah, we might do that.
But yeah, 2020 is going to be pretty fun. Got a lot of stuff that we'd like to do, so definitely be excited for that. But yeah, you guys know the drill. The discussion does not have to stop here. Facebook, Twitter, the Discord server, probably the best way to keep the discussion going. So yeah, it's been fun talking TOS today and the Mirror Universe. I know we don't often get to talk about TOS and mirror stuff, so it was fun to do that.
It's not different kind of topic than we've done, especially recently. Yeah, Ian, last show of the decade. True.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have some really exciting stuff hopefully planned for 2020. We have a lot of new Star Trek coming, and stay tuned. We're gonna be talking more about our plans and how we're gonna cover everything and keep things fresh. So we'll be in touch and keep an eye on our Twitter. And if like anybody's here, if anybody would like to be a part of our Discord channel, Discord server, please shoot me a DM on Twitter, TrekFan4387. I'll be happy to invite you in. We call them Trek After Dark. We try to do them about once a month. It's been a little bit since we've done it with the holidays, and it's kind of crazy this time of year. But we try to do occasional, really relaxed group kind of hangouts where we'll watch Star Trek, play trivia, kind of collectively together, talk about whatever we have on our minds, whatever's going on in the world of Star Trek, or just anywhere really. We'll talk about anything. Ian's been there. Quite a few of our regulars who come to our live streams, Thad and Trekkie Rob and many others have made appearances in the past. So we're hoping to do more of them in 2020, and the best way to find out about those is to be on the Discord server or to follow along on Twitter, of course. But hit us up if you want to be involved with things like that.
Yep. All right. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks, guys.